So let's talk about what happens when you have a whole bunch of audio clips on your timeline and you want to ensure that they all conform to a particular audio level, or you decide it's a vocal, which is a selection of loads of different clips, and you want to apply an EQ setting to it to give it a bit of, sizzle or whatever you want to call it. Obviously, you can go into every single clip and then you can go to your effects and then you can go to your audio effects. Let's get a 10-band equalizer. And of course, you can then go to your effect controls and you can set up your equalizer. And then what a lot of people do is they then grab that, they go Control C, they select all the rest of the clips and Control V, and boom. On the clips, you can see there's a little effects thing and the EQ is pasted on all clips. So you'd think problem solved, but of course it's not, because if you want to do any changes, you have to go into individual clips and change it all, which is kind of annoying. So again, what a lot of people do then is they get all the clips and then they go up to clip and they nest them and then apply the EQ. And you'd think, great, problem solved, because now all we've got is the one EQ and that's it, wouldn't you? You'd think, right, job done. But of course, you've got no graphical display. It's very hard then to move clips around in sync with the audio. It becomes very kludgy and horrible. So that's not really any way to move forward. So thankfully, Adobe has thought about this, and the way it does it is pretty good. It's more like a mixing desk where you'd have a send and return or auxiliary send, stuff like that, where you can basically chuck the tracks out to an effects processor and then they're returned with that intact. And it means your audio timeline will look exactly the same as it always does. Now down the side, you can see that you've got like audio 1 here and audio 2, audio 3. So what you do is go down to the bottom here where it says mix, right click and say add submix track. And you can see the submix track there. Right, so here's your audio track mixer and here's audio 1. We want to tell audio 1 to go through to the submix, and there we go. Now, if we'd also got effects, say on channel 2, like this, or track 2, then we'd also put them through to the submix as well. And so basically you can route any channel you want through to this submix. So then the question, I guess, is, well, your submix channel, how do you add the effects to that? Well, there's a little arrow up here. If you click that, you'll see you've now got, in effect, these effects slots here where you can put different effects, a bit like a rack system in a studio where you slot in a rack and then you plug it in. So going back to our original EQ setup, click on here and then you select filter and EQ, get your 10-band EQ, and then just double click on the EQ. And here you are. And you just then do that horrible bit of EQ that I did before. And everything now, which has been told to go through the submix, will now go through that EQ. And then it gets better because then you can add something else. You could add maybe a reverb. So we're going to add a studio reverb and double click on that. And we'll decide to have a big hall, I think, or something. Is there a big hall? Great hall. Why have a big hall when you can have a great hall? Yeah, so now we've got nasty EQ in a great hall, which is everybody's voiceover dream setup. And it's that simple. This is a much better way of working than before. And it means that everything's intact. Your audio track is fine. And remember, you can add another submix track. So we've got submix 2 and submix 1. So at the moment, those two are going through there, but what we could do is we could say, actually, we want audio 2 to go through submix 1. That's really confusing. And then we're going to, what should we do? Put some compression on it. So put dynamics on it, and let's just set up a basic limiter, make it -3 dB, bit of compression. So I'll make it up by 5, that should squish the audio, and then we're going to gate it as well. so that it goes to silence every time it drops below a certain level. And that's now working nice on that. You'll notice down the bottom as well, there's like frequently accessed controls that pop up, such as you can turn the auto gate on and off just by sliding your mouse across to turn that on and off. And then you've got high frequency cut here, you've got width diffusion. You can basically access the controls simply from down here, which is very handy. Which allows you to, let's go into the graphic. If we go here, you can see I can change all the different bands without actually jumping in or having to double click into the graphic equalizer. So it's a pretty fast way of doing it. Again, we could have done that. So we've got the studio reverb, and I can keep adding effects. So I could add a pitch shifter in here. And then again, you can see that the pitch shifter transposition is accessible here directly. So as the timeline's playing, you can actually hear the difference. Which is great. So if you can get your head around submixes, that would be awesome, because it'll again simplify your timeline. It also means that, you know, if the client comes back and says, you know, our systems actually need your audio output at -12 and you give us a soundtrack at -6, it's really super simple for you to then reprocess all the audio out to the required level without having to jump into individual clips and change everything. So hopefully you can see the point of submixes. And remember, you can have several and you can route them all. I suppose it's just really holding a mental picture in your head of how everything's working.